we're gonna do a follow-up to our last video, and that last one was on goals and using the process, outcome, SMART goals, and then giving you that weightlifting example. What we want to do today is kind of take it a step further and show you what it means to kind of be accountable, and then again using process versus outcome and why it is so important for that process to be in alignment with the outcome.
So what we did is last time we did a performance goal, but there are many types of goals, so we had talked about that previously, but we wanted to go ahead and a goal that's common amongst many people is I want to lose weight. So what we did is we threw out the goal of I want to lose 20 pounds while undergoing body recomposition. It's great to lose body fat, that's absolutely awesome, but at the same time I'm going to focus on obtaining muscle mass. If you have more muscle mass, then in a state of rest you're burning more calories, you'll have better lines, you'll be more effective in your daily life and have the ability to do more things. So more muscle, less fat, it's a winning equation.
Recomposition is something that happens normally. If you've ever heard a trainer or anybody saying that you should stop paying attention to the scale because as you lose weight, you gain muscle and you kind of have a net zero change, that's because you might be losing fat, but you're also increasing your lean mass, you're increasing your muscle mass, and you don't really want to pay attention to a scale when that happens, if you're doing it correctly. So that's what John's saying is, hey, we want to lose 20 pounds, but we also want to focus on providing some positive change in muscle mass.
So what we did building on that, so our base goal, I want to lose 20 pounds. So that's our outcome, that's our FAR goal, that's the attainment of our end, okay? What we're going to focus on for process is what we did is we broke it down into negative things that people are doing on a day-to-day basis, and then we took it a step further, counteracting those negative behaviors with positive behaviors that we can replace those things with.
Yeah, exactly. So these are some of the common things that we hear or that are out there in the world. It's like, what is the excuse, or what is the thing that's being blamed as far as I can't reach X goal in this? We're talking about weight loss. I can't lose weight because of my genetics. I can't lose weight because food tastes good, or something like that. You know, there's always a I can't. Well, how do you approach that to meet that goal? Well, you have to find a way to replace the I can't with what you can control. So what can you control? You can control your macros. You can control your activity level. You can control your relationship with food. And that's a hard one to kind of really accomplish by yourself. You know, there's a lot of value in that support system that you have. Included that is a coach, included in that is your family. You know, so if you are one of those people that can do that on your own, fine, great. You got to understand that it is a process, but before you can kind of step into that process and allow yourself to adapt to it, you have to recognize what you're doing in the current time.
And looking at things like step by step, so we hear this stuff all the time, and it's something to where like it's commonalities. So that's both positive and negative. A lot of people have the same issues, which is a positive thing because you're not by yourself in the struggle. Negative thing, there's a lot of people with common issues that could be resolved easily. One of the common things we see is the seafood, eat food diet. The chips were there, so I ate them. The Oreos were in my pantry, so I ate them. Netflix and things like that are too easy. They're too common of a thing to sit there and just pound and put away food. Those are calories that don't necessarily serve a purpose.
Office workers, all these holiday parties. So there's a plate of cookies. Doesn't mean you have to eat 2 or 3 of them. I mean, you could eat half of a cookie and then say, well, that tastes pretty good, but I don't need these extra calories. Let me just take a bite and throw the rest away. And that sounds like, well, why would you do that? It's a good food. But if you really want to accomplish the goal, you have to take ownership of your behaviors.
And simultaneously, you're getting the same chemical reaction in your brain from a single bite if you wait a second as you would if you just pop the whole cookie in your mouth. But you're probably getting 50 calories versus 200, 250 calories. The other thing is blaming things I can't control. We're grad students. We're super, super busy. We have no time, but you have to make time for the things that are beneficial to you. Things that you can't control might be my family likes this food, or I don't have time, or I'm too stressed out. Exercise is one of the best things that you can do for stress. There's always, to every excuse or every argument that you create, there's always going to be a counter argument.
So just as kind of an exercise, like think back how many times this week, if you've talked with someone about fitness, or you know someone that's in that realm, and you sit and you maybe yourself have said the words that I can't do this. if that's something that you've done, you've got to look at that, look back in the past whenever that happened and say, how could I have worded that in a positive manner?
Yeah, and then not dedicating to the process. So if you're going to do something, never half-ass something. Do it wholeheartedly, fully commit to it. And for not committing, that might mean that you're not tracking the food volume, you're not looking at the type. So it's, I'm going to eat that whole sleeve of Oreos, I'm going to eat all those M&Ms and not think anything about it. And I'm also not going to exercise. And if I am going to exercise, you need to wholeheartedly to where you're regulating your intensity at that point, making sure that you're consistent, that you're getting after it here and there.
1 hour on the elliptical at a really low intensity is probably the same as you go and walking around the mall.
Yep.
You know, you're not getting any more benefit. What if you did some type of incline on the treadmill, or you then got off of that and said, okay, I do need to do some resistance training. I do need to provide a more intense variable within this training session.
Yeah, and then not to pick on ladies or anything like that, but if we're going to go back to this body recomposition, this means going and picking up a barbell. This means training dumbbells. It means doing squats. It's not just hammering away kilometers or miles that I'm going to knock out on cardiovascular equipment. Switching gears a little bit, let's look at the positive. So how can I instill positive behaviors? How can I make sure that I'm healthier? We're going to look at planning meals. If you don't know how to do that and you don't know what macronutrients are, just start real simple and work on whole foods versus processed. Processed foods are things like cereal, candy bars, things that have a long shelf life. A life hack for this is if you're shopping at the grocery store, don't go down any of the middle aisles. All your whole foods are going to be on the outsides. So that's going to be things like your dairy, things like your healthy meats, things like your fruits, your vegetables. If you literally just eat a diet of meat and vegetables and fruit, you're going to lose a lot of weight. And as long as your protein is in check, you'll feel better. But as long as your protein is in check and you're hitting what you need to training-wise, you're going to be able to do this body recon.
Yeah, just to kind of provide a little bit more reinforcement on this processed foods. Those things can have that shelf life that John's talking about because they're full of preservatives. When you eat foods that don't have a shelf life, that are our bodies are naturally designed to process themselves, you're just going to feel better generally because your body's not having to handle all those chemicals that are there to make a food-like product last on a shelf for 3 months or however long it's going to be there.
That's a key component of what you just said. It's a food-like product. It's an imitation food. It's not real food. You can eat it, but is it necessarily going to nourish you? Is it going to help you achieve your goals? Focusing on what can be controlled. You are in control of so much more than what you want to believe. And when you sit down and start to look at it, okay, well, what are things that I'm doing and what are things that I can do? You've got access to things that you wouldn't believe. We live in a modern age with internet. There's all kinds of help resources out there. There's trainers and people at your gym that are more than willing to help you. Get up and go do something. Focus on what you're eating. Focus on making sure that you're checking off those boxes on a daily basis.
Yeah, to follow that up, I mean, commit to the process, right? Find your drive. What's the reason that you're doing these things? Why have you set that lose 20 pounds? You know, is it because over the past couple of years that you've slowly seen your weight increase? We could do a whole talk on behavior change and the process that it takes to really connect to your why. But if the first question you have to ask is, what is the why? If you can do that, then you can begin to commit to it. And the two most important things I think are not necessarily like getting down to every gram. You know, like we said here, this is a very good starting place, right? Replace your processed foods with whole foods. But tracking food and making time for exercise. Tracking food can be as simple as tracking 1 meal a day. You know, what am I going to do today as far as replacing processed with whole? My breakfast is usually something from the gas station. How can you change that? Cook a couple eggs in the morning. Have some fruit with those eggs. And that replaces the donut or whatever else was fulfilling that for your breakfast meal. And then making time for exercise. Like we were talking about before, I can't make time for exercise. Time is probably it's the biggest excuse. Like, I don't have time for this. If you are dedicated and you really, really want to make something happen, that word make says it all. You have to make time, and you have to be willing to dedicate to whatever it is that it means to really accomplish losing that 20 pounds. That means going to the gym 3 to 5 times a week, picking up a barbell, and having an intensity that's more than walking and being able to hold a conversation. You know, those are the types of things that you have to do, but making time to do them is what needs to happen.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is that like time is the biggest excuse that we hear, but approaching it from the factor of you can take time now and live a long and healthy life, or you can lose time on the back end. To look at that perspective, essentially is if you're not exercising, you're not taking time to do this stuff, that job you're working, the degree you're studying for, the things that you're sacrificing this for are not going to matter when you have premature death at 50 and 60 years old. That's morbid, but that is the world that we live in. By taking these small steps and things like that, you're going to go ahead and head in a direction so you're set up long term. It makes life easier in the day to day, but it also sets you up for years to come.
Yeah, it may not even come in early death though. It may come in, you know, some type of disease state that continues to decline. And you know, what is quality of life? At 50 years old, should you have diabetes, obesity, all these types of things that just compile and make quality of life worse and worse and worse. Now, so we have this, right? We have what we call negative and what we're calling positive. You can replace the negatives with the positives. We understand this is not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen like that. But what we do want to do is challenge you today to write down, and you can replace this word with current and future. Write down your outcome. It may not be losing 20 pounds. It may be gaining 20 pounds. It may be lifting 20 more pounds on the bar, or putting 20 more pounds on the bar in whatever the lift is. So write down that outcome. We challenge you to write it down, and then next to that or underneath it, go through your data, go through yesterday in your head. What happened? What were your currents? What did you do throughout this past week that would or would not lead to reaching that goal?
Yeah, and by doing that self-awareness and realizing what you're doing, you can start to consistently implement the positive to replace the negative. Consistency is the biggest thing. If you can even take out half of these negative things, replace them with positive, and you have consistency, you're going to achieve this goal. And you might achieve things faster than what you would ever believe. By doing these little steps and implementing some of the things that we talked about in our goal setting video previously, it's going to be really hard to make you someone that isn't going to achieve the goals or make you as an athlete, you're going to be very difficult to beat. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Nutrition, goal setting, any of that stuff, and we're going to help you. Thank you.